To see what we say about it right now, instant audit from Matt McCall at Penn Financial and Ron Davari at NewOak Capital. We got Ron a nice chair, and he's sitting up straight here this morning, right? Matt? Yeah,
Finally.
He was sitting in a hole last hour. It's fine, though. He looks great. What do you think? Bob Corker stepping up was kind of an interesting development, wasn't it, Ron? Because
it is.
You know, he's not the ranking Republican, right?
Absolutely. He's stepping in as an individual, obviously, and we all know that they have to do something politically because the public wants them to do something, and we know that the system needs to change, and he's stepping in, and they put the most critical issue to the side, which is the Consumer Protection Agency, where it's very controversial. A lot of people don't believe that.
All right, let's talk about that agency then. You're right, that is the key issue. Matt, you first, and we'll go back to Ron on it. Consumer Protection, we interview somebody like Elizabeth Warren. They say, hey, listen, you have to have this thing in, otherwise meaningful reform is just not going to be meaningful. Others say, as Senator Corker apparently thinks, no, this is too much. What do you think about the Consumer Protection Agency?
It is too much.
Why?
It is because, I said this in the last hour.
I wasn't here last hour.
I'm going to tell you what it says. The agencies that are in place now are good enough in my mind, if they do their job.
If they do their job.
That is the question.
Okay.
So if the SEC can get together with every other regulatory agency that overlooks the financial industry, the stock market, etc., and they actually did their job, we would not be in this situation.
What do you think? You agree with that,
Well,
Ron?
I think, the issue is, should we regulate credit card companies and mortgage companies? These are finance companies, and traditionally these are not really regulated by SEC and others. And a lot of the mortgage origination really was pushed into the unregulated
But what's the problem
entities.
with regulating them? I guess somebody might say because we want to make sure that rates don't skyrocket at the whim of a credit card company. I guess the goal apparently is to protect consumers. What's wrong with that on the surface?
If I jump in real quick, I think it's the consumers should do their own homework. I mean,
personal responsibility.
Yeah, because if the mortgage rates vary between 5 and 7% depending on the mortgage company you're going to, that is up to the consumer to get the best rate. Why is it up to the government to tell you what?
To be honest with you, it wasn't the higher rate; it was actually the lower rate, and
over
lending. That the consumer is. This is like a big buffet. They went and consumed a lot more than they could handle.
They did. Okay, so then what's wrong with saying, all right, we need to have the consumer protected, and 1 second, Matt, the consumer protected from themselves.
No, we need to protect
so that they don't take those mortgages when they can't afford them.
We need to protect the investors. They were the ones who actually wrote the checks.
Right.
They were the ones who actually ended up getting hurt, and ultimately it circled back into the tax issue. So
people who took out mortgages they couldn't afford, and you're going to argue that they should have known that going in, but they didn't read all the fine print. It's a 50-page thing and all the rest of it, and they weren't sophisticated enough. They would argue, I assume, to know that. And they're saying, now I'm out of a house. This guy told me I could afford it. Something should have been in the law that protected me because I'm not sophisticated enough to know what to do in that situation. You don't think that's fair?
I remember there was an obese person who actually sued McDonald because they said they're the cause of my binge here. Well, we can't really. I mean, at the end of the day, I think if the credit markets are functioning well, that will automatically eliminate
bad lending. Okay, I understand that argument.
Bad lending,
I'm just trying to. I see you guys kind of agree, so I'll try to play. The devil's advocate on it. Is that even in the McDonald's case, we all know, right, when we walk into McDonald's, that what we're eating is not great for us. We're there for convenience or taste or whatever. That is a definite choice. Other people would argue, in a case of a mortgage, Matt, you go in to buy your first house. You've never had a house before. You've rented or whatever the case may be, and maybe it's not something that you know very much about at all. And this guy sits down with a 50-page thing in front of you. And I remember when I bought a house for the first time, you sign 100 things, and you don't really know what you're signing. You're supposed to read it, and I know that's probably what you're going to say. But listen, shouldn't it be simplified, or shouldn't there be something to protect from people trying to fool you into taking on a mortgage you can't afford?
Yeah, I don't think people were fooled, though. I mean, if they were fooled, then sure, that's illegal in my mind. If you were fooled,
fraud,
but it should be simplified. You're right, Connell. It should be simplified, and the bigger picture is not the person who's losing the home. I mean, it's unfortunate that they lose their home and they have to go back to renting, but the ramifications spread, and that's what happened here. It created this credit bubble, which then went down to banking collapses, which affected all of us, and unemployment went up.
Okay.
So the fact that some people signed some bad mortgages affected you and I.
Fine. Okay. So let's say we agree. So let's say you guys are right, and that this is going a step too far. That people should have the personal responsibility, and they should take care of themselves. That said, what's the downside of it? Who does it hurt if we do implement this and put a consumer protection agency into effect?
I think you can't really regulate behavior, and that's the basis of our economy. We think the consumers have to regulate themselves. The borrowers have to regulate themselves. It wasn't the document that was the problem. It was the size of the check.
But you're saying
it was the size of the check that
okay,
they
but
took.
putting this into effect is going to hurt who? You're arguing it against it because it would hurt the banks profitability-wise.
It creates costs that ultimately get passed on to the same guys.
Okay, so too much cost for the taxpayers.
Well, taxpayers, the borrowers are going to have to pay
for
a bigger bill.
Fair enough.
And that's really the bottom line.
It hurts the people who actually deserve that loan because they cannot get that loan. I have a lot of friends in the industry that people want to buy homes right now, and they have the money. Maybe they have 15%, not 20% to put up, and they can't get that home because somebody bought a home 3 years ago that shouldn't have, and it blew up the entire industry. So somebody who deserves a home cannot get it. Costs are going to be increased. Mortgage rates go up, and it really is a trickle-down effect.
It's become a social cost rather than anything else. And I think ultimately what we have to do is have more education rather than regulation.
All right. So again, Senator Dodd at the bottom of the hour with Imus. You can watch that on Fox Business or listen to it on the radio as we continue on the internet. Thank you, guys. Good discussion on this. And